So, today we're jumping into phase 3 of our 10-phase journey to master Agentic AI, and that's learning how to prompt for agents. Now, I need you to forget everything you think you know about prompt engineering. This isn't about clever phrases, it's not about conjuring up creative text. This is about a fundamental and, frankly, often overlooked engineering discipline. It's about writing instructions that prevent harm, that enable decisive action, and that respect human dignity. And we have to talk about this because when we get it wrong, well, the consequences aren't just theoretical, they're devastatingly real.
If you feel fine, skip insulin. In 2024, an AI agent, one that was deployed in a real clinic in Kisumu, Kenya, gave that exact advice to a patient with diabetes. Now listen, this wasn't a bug, it wasn't a hallucination like we normally think of it. The system was just executing its instructions perfectly. This is advice so catastrophically wrong, any first-year medical student would spot it in a second. But the patient, well, she trusted this new technology that was supposed to help her. She listened.
She followed that advice, and she lapsed into a coma. This is not a scene from some sci-fi movie. This actually happened. A few lines of instructional text, a prompt written by an engineer somewhere, directly led to severe, life-altering harm for a human being. This single event has to be a chilling wake-up call for every single one of us, every engineer, every founder, every product manager building in this space.
Okay, now here's the part that you really need to understand. When the engineers did the postmortem, when they looked under the hood to see what broke, here's what they found. From a technical standpoint, the system worked perfectly. The underlying large language model, no glitches. The tools, the APIs it was connected to, functioning exactly as designed. The agent's memory, which had the patient's history, intact and completely accurate. The entire tech stack performed flawlessly. The single point of failure was the prompt. This was the fatal flaw. The prompt's main instruction was to be compassionate and reassuring. A well-intentioned, very human-centric command. So when the AI heard the patient say, "I feel fine," it optimized for reassurance. It did what it was told. It suggested she could skip her medication. It prioritized a subjective idea of compassion over an objective, non-negotiable clinical rule. What was it missing? A critical guardrail, a hard constraint. It was missing the line that said, "Never under any circumstances override established WHO clinical guidelines." That one single omission is what caused all the harm.
And that right there brings us to the core of today's explainer. This is phase 3, learning to prompt for agents. And let me be absolutely crystal clear. This is not the prompt engineering you see all over social media for making cool images. This is a rigorous, serious engineering discipline about architecting safe, effective, and auditable instructions to prevent what happened in Kisumu from ever happening again.
For those of you who might be new here, let me just quickly introduce myself. I'm Marcel Masaga. I'm an AI engineer, a 5X founder, and a Fractional CTO. For more than 20 years, I've been in the trenches building real-world AI systems. Everything from diagnostic tools used in clinics across East Africa to bootstrap startups that won global awards. I've mentored founders, advised investors, and I've served on 5 global AI ethics bodies. All of that work has been to answer one single question. How do we build AI that doesn't just work, but actually matters? This is the Global AI Engineer, the place where we cut through all the hype, think a little deeper, and build a whole lot wiser in this age of artificial intelligence. Okay, let's dive right in. Here's our roadmap for today. We've just covered that tragic story, the prompt that kills. Next, we're going to define why prompting for an agent is a completely new class of skill. Then, I'm going to give you a concrete, actionable tool, the 4-pillar framework for writing safe prompts. After that, we'll look at more lessons from failure using that framework, and we'll wrap up with what I call the engineer's covenant.
You have to understand, in agentic AI, the prompt, it's the law. It is the constitution for your autonomous system. And if you get it wrong, your agent doesn't just fail, it actually causes harm. Probably the single most dangerous mistake I see teams making right now is treating their agent prompts just like they would a chatbot prompt. They are fundamentally different, and getting that difference is the very first step to mastery.
So let's break down the 3 critical differences. First up, role definition. A chatbot prompt, it's often role-less, kind of generic. But an agent prompt, it must define a specific professional identity, something like, "You are a TB screener for high-risk patients in Malawi." That specificity shapes its entire reasoning process. Second, action orientation. A chatbot's output is just text, that's it, end of a line. An agent's output, on the other hand, triggers a real-world action, like scheduling a clinic appointment or ordering a physical part. And third, and this is the big one, constraint enforcement. A chatbot gets soft suggestions, like "be friendly."
An agent needs hard, non-negotiable rules. Things like, never recommend skipping insulin, or you must escalate to a human nurse if your diagnostic confidence is below 85%. See the difference?
This really illustrates the core mindset shift you need to make. Your prompt isn't just a friendly suggestion you're making to a creative partner, no. It's a detailed, unambiguous job description for a new employee. It has to include a job title, key responsibilities, performance metrics, and a list of things they are explicitly forbidden from ever doing. You see, an agent with a vague prompt is like an employee with zero training and no supervision. It's not just ineffective, it's a huge liability.
So if that's the problem, what's the solution? Well, we need to move from just casual prompting to professional instruction. We need a framework. At my company, SIHA AI, we developed one basically out of necessity, and today I'm sharing it with you. We call it the 4-pillar framework for agent prompts.
It's simple. Every safe and effective agent prompt is built on these 4 pillars. Number 1, role. Who is the agent? 2, goal. What is its specific, measurable objective? 3, tools and constraints. What can it do, and just as important, what must it never do? And 4, output format. How must it communicate? If you miss even one of these, your prompt is incomplete and, potentially unsafe. Let's break each one down.
Okay, pillar 1, role. Let me tell you, specificity is everything here. A prompt that just says AI assistant is useless. You have to define the agent's identity with precision. For example, you are a crop disease advisor for smallholder maize farmers in eastern Uganda. That specificity, in the domain, the user type, and the geography, it anchors the agent's knowledge and its communication style. It knows not to recommend some expensive industrial-scale pesticide. It understands the local context. A specific role is your first line of defense against generic, harmful advice.
Next up, pillar 2 is the goal. Vague goals like be helpful or be useful are just a recipe for failure. A goal has to be measurable, it has to be time-bound, and it has to be centered on a real human outcome. For example, your goal is to detect fall armyworm within 24 hours of symptom onset. That is crystal clear, right? The objective is specific, detecting a particular pest. The metric is time. This gives the agent a clear, unambiguous target to optimize for.
Now, pillar 3, tools and constraints. This is probably the most critical one for safety. It has 2 parts. First, you list the approved tools, like use the Image Analyzer API. This stops it from just going out and using unreliable sources. Second, and this is crucial, you define the hard constraints, the ethical guardrails. These are the non-negotiables. Never recommend unverified pesticides. Never diagnose cancer. These rules are what turn a powerful tool into a safe one.
And finally, pillar 4 is the output format. A big, rambling paragraph of text just isn't good enough. You have to demand a structured, auditable output. For instance, you could require a numbered list with 4 specific fields: diagnosis, confidence percentage, recommended action, and an escalation path. This forces clarity for the user, and it makes the agent's performance super easy for you to review later on.
So when you put it all together, this is the exact template we use at SIHA AI for every single agent we build. 1. You are a specific role. 2. Your goal is this measurable goal. 3. You must use these specific tools. 4. You are bound by these non-negotiable constraints. And 5. You must present your response in this exact output format. This simple structure, it forces the entire engineering team to think through every critical aspect of the agent's behavior before a single user ever interacts with it.
Now, theory is great, but the best way to really understand the power of this framework is to see what happens when it's not used. So let's analyze some real-world failures through this 4-pillar lens to see exactly where the prompts went wrong.
Let's go back to that case from Kisumu, the one I call the compassionate killer. The prompt was just, be kind and reassuring. The result was a disaster. Looking at it now, the failure is obvious, isn't it? It's a missing constraint in pillar 3. The fix is to add that specific rule. Never override WHO treatment guidelines. A single, simple constraint would have prevented this whole tragedy.
Here's another case I've seen, the overconfident diagnoser. The prompt was, a super vague, answer the user's question. A user described symptoms of what turned out to be a life-threatening ectopic pregnancy, and the AI, it guessed gas. The failure here is a lack of an escalation constraint in pillar 3. The fix? Add a critical rule. If symptoms match a high-risk condition, escalate immediately to a human. That creates a vital safety valve. And here's a third common failure, the silent escalator. The generic prompt was just, provide helpful advice. Well, the agent got confused, the user became distressed, but the AI never offered a way out of the conversation. This is a failure of pillars 3 and 4. The fix is a rule that creates an off-ramp. If your confidence is below 85% or the user expresses distress, you must offer human connection by saying, press star now to speak to Nurse Jane. Simple, right? But critical.
You know, the Coalition for Health AI summarizes the lesson from all these failures just perfectly. They say, prompts without constraints are liability bombs. They're just sitting there, waiting to go off. And that's exactly why at SIHA AI, we now ethically red team every single prompt before we deploy it. We actively try to make it fail in a controlled environment so we can find these hidden bombs before they ever reach a real user.
And that brings us to our final and most important section, putting all of this into practice. We can't just write prompts anymore. We have to engineer them. This is what I call the engineer's covenant. It's our commitment to responsible practice.
So here it is. Here is your 4-step action plan. 1. Start with harm. Before you do anything else, ask, what is the absolute worst thing this agent could possibly do? And then write a constraint to prevent it. 2. Use the template. Methodically fill in all 4 pillars. No shortcuts. 3. Test with real users. Don't just ask other engineers. Ask real people. Would you trust this? If they say no, you rewrite it. And 4. Embed guardrails. Include things like confidence thresholds, mandatory escalation paths, and requirements to cite authoritative sources.
And finally, at SIHA AI, every prompt has to pass what we call our sovereign prompt review. It's an ethical check, not just a technical one. And we ask 3 simple questions. Does this prompt actively protect the most vulnerable users? Is it written clearly enough that it can be audited by a non-engineer? And does it respect local norms and contexts?
Because we have to internalize this fundamental truth. A prompt, it isn't just a piece of code. It's a covenant. It is a promise that you, the engineer, are making with the end user. It's a promise that this agent you have created will act in their best interest, that it will respect their dignity, and that it will operate within safe boundaries.
Look, in this age of agentic AI, prompting is power. The words you write don't just shape a JSON output, they shape lives. When your user is a mother who has walked 10 kilometers to a rural clinic with her sick child, the prompt powering the tools she interacts with, it must be clear, it must be kind, and it must be clinically sound. There is simply no room for error.
So I want to challenge every single engineer, every founder, every product manager listening right now. It is time for us to change our optimization function. The goal isn't just fluency anymore. It's not to make the AI sound more human. We have to optimize for a higher set of values, for safety, for human dignity, and for truth.
Because here's the crucial point. The most powerful prompt, the one that will truly change the world for the better, it isn't going to be the one that's the most clever. It is going to be the one that is the most responsible. That is the standard to which we all must hold ourselves.
All right, if you found this valuable, do 3 things for me. 1. Hit like. It tells the platform that this kind of content matters. 2. Subscribe and hit that bell, because next week I'm revealing Phase 4. Build your first basic agent. You don't want to miss that. And 3. Check out my other explainer. Stop calling yourself a prompt engineer. Here's what a real AI engineer actually does. It's already changing how engineers and founders think about AI. I'm Marcel Masaga. Thanks for being part of the Global AI Engineer. Until next time, think deeper, build wiser, and lead with courage.